Hello, and a very warm welcome to all of our guests attending day 2. My name is Nikki Jones, and I'm delighted to be your host for today's event, as well as for the remainder of this week as we celebrate a full week of Everyone Can Automate. This event comes at a very exciting time in the industry. It's undeniable that there's a tectonic shift happening in the automation space, which, as we know, has been fueled by, well, a couple of things, like a global pandemic, which then accelerated the digital transformation agenda. We have increasing technological innovations, and so the list goes on. But until recently, automation has been employed in businesses primarily looking to streamline and accelerate tasks for back office functions like finance, accounting, and human resources. All very important, but not the only game in town. As automation, AI, and work converge in the enterprise, new technologies are emerging that address the shifting skill set of enterprise workers and how they, or rather we, consume technology. We've all learned from Google, and we've all learned from our iPhones. And if you're anything like me, learned from our children. We've learned from advances in consumer technology, the need to make technology in the enterprise easier to use, easier to consume, and easier to access. Now, if we look at this story through a digital assistant lens, we have this concept of skills, which are built-in capabilities. In an Alexa environment, a skill might be playing music, answering questions, or perhaps giving you the weather forecast on an hourly basis if you live here in the UK. Now look at this same concept, but within the enterprise and the ability to understand and process a lot of content, especially as the volume and complexity of content continues to grow exponentially. Valuable information and insights, vital for decision taking, lives within your CRM, BPM, and ERP systems. To leverage the value of that information, businesses need to quickly, automatically extract and understand all of the relevant data and integrate that information into every aspect of the business. So you might say the role of automation is changing so that it can automate tasks and deliver information both from and into systems. The benefits are going to be amazing. Rapid deployment, easy to configure, easy to consume. Human-like performance without the need for weekends, summer holidays, and dare I say, sick days. Now, for those of you who may have missed our many LinkedIn posts over the last week, Everest Group named Automation Anywhere a leader in its robotic process automation assessment for 2021. This is the 5th year we've been named a leader among the 23 vendors evaluated. So you can just imagine the excitement. We were recognized not only for our cloud native platform, our pre-built integrations, and our Google Cloud relationship, but our ability to bring new consumer-like experience to the enterprise through ARI, our bot to human interface, simplifying everyday tasks, which is where today's presentation and all sessions this week will focus. And this is precisely why we're launching this event, to help companies like yours get ahead or stay ahead of the automation curve. Now, if you're anything like me, you'll no doubt have 101 questions. Could I please encourage you to ask those questions in the event chat, which we will be monitoring throughout the event, and we will address, time permitting, at the end, or immediately afterwards in follow-up with you directly via email. So, without further ado, I'm ready to get started, and hopefully you are too. There feels like no better time than to introduce you to today's presentation, Everyone Can Automate, and I'm thrilled to welcome to the virtual stage Nancy Hauge and Forrest White, who will inspire and empower you about the future of work today from within their own global HR team. Nancy, it's over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nancy Hauge, and I have the privilege of being the Chief Human Resources Officer at Automation Anywhere. When I joined Automation Anywhere 4 years ago, our CEO, Mihir, asked me a very provocative question. He said, Nancy, what do you think the role of human resources will be when 30% of the workforce isn't human? And I thought, for someone who's had a 40-year career, this would be a fabulous question to be able to answer before I retire. And so I've spent the last 4 years pondering how human resources will remain relevant in the future. In the future, humans will only do the work that only humans can do. And we have to start to define that work. What is that work? How will that differ from what we have done for the last 200 years through the industrial age? The industrial age has not changed work really for over 200 years. The truth is that human beings have been in service to the industrial age. We have functioned as robots in service of the capital equipment or the large business systems that have been installed. And so humans have been asked to perform routine, mundane tasks in order to serve this industrialized system, all of which was defined as throughput process and yield and productivity measures that were about how fast a human being could do certain things. That has to change. That has changed. Automation has changed it forever. If we think about the future of work, we begin to think about what humans should be doing. Now, if this particular passage from a book, published a few years ago, the book is somewhat cynical, but still has these elements of truth that for 3,000 calories a day, structured some time off, a jolt of fear, human beings could function as robots over and over and over again, generation after generation, self-replicating. If we look at the workplace there, that happens to be a picture of a workplace from 1958 in the United States. The truth is, our workplace hasn't changed that much. People generally still sit perhaps in open office spaces, but pretty rectilinear rows. They still have a keyboard on their desk. They still have a communication device. It hasn't really changed. We still herd people into environments, at least before the pandemic, we herded people into environments called a workplace where we supervised them, where we measured them, where we clocked them, and we asked them to perform as robots. So how does that change? What will automation do to change it? Well, imagine that you have a digital assistant in your life, and imagine there is a partnership between automation and human beings that allows humans to do what humans do best: think, create, learn, innovate. What automation does is it allows us access to cranial capacity that has been hidden and camouflaged by the industrial age for over 200 years. When you open that cranial capacity, when you get access to how human beings invent and create and think, what will that do to the future of the world? Certainly, it'll change the future of work. So how does it work? Well, let's talk about what a digital assistant is. A digital assistant is simply a piece of software that can do routine and mundane tasks. It is algorithm based. If this, then that. If this, then that. But it will do anything that a human can do with their fingers on a keyboard or moving data from one place to another. If a human can do this routine task, generally your digital assistant can do it as well. If we think about how we have all functioned in the last, let's say, 20 years, we have been moving along this journey toward digital assistants. If you'd asked me what the weather was going to be tomorrow in 2005, I would go to a keyboard. If you asked me in 2015, I go to my smartphone. If you ask me today, I say, hey, Alexa, what's the weather tomorrow? And I never lose eye contact with you. Imagine that for your business. What does that do if you could pull people's attention away from their keyboards and focus on your customers? From a human resources perspective, what does that mean about engagement and what kind of work human resources people can do in the future? I have a plethora of digital assistant best friends. I have of the 40 that we currently are using in human resources at Automation Anywhere. Here's an interesting short list for you. What I will tell you is this. We didn't automate anything until about 2018. We started with a headcount report. Took hours a week to figure out where people were around the world. We were growing very rapidly. We had 2 payroll systems running. We had several PEOs going on. Just trying to keep track of where everybody was a Herculean task. And we automated it. The young woman who was doing that task spent about 8 hours a week doing it. She then turned those 8 hours a week into inventing a spectacular intern program for us. She was a little concerned about losing the visibility that she had in being the only person who understood where the heads were in the company. What she realized, though, is she gained better visibility by being able to help our partners in the business invest in the future of the workforce. Some of these bots that we have, some of these digital assistants have done remarkable work for us on an ongoing basis, whether it's making certain data has integrity, whether it is, again, counting heads. We certainly have one that did a fabulous job for us as we transitioned from one HRIS system to another, pulling unstructured data out of a system and making certain that documents got into the right files in the new system. It was a remarkable bot. That bot we retired. Not every bot is one that's going to go on forever. We've retired a few, shook their hands and retired them. Others we depend on every single day. This past year, we added about 10% additional headcount capacity through the use of automation. And in a function that always is resource deprived in human resources, it is amazing what small amounts of automation did for us in terms of freeing up the qualified professional folks that we had who could then do all sorts of new and different and exciting work. My colleague Forrest White is going to show you some of these, some of the bots we've created and talk to you a little bit about the journey. Forrest?
Thanks, Nancy. I'm going to share with you, first of all, a few use cases. These are automations that we've developed and are using, and with a special emphasis on automations that have this digital assistant, human automation collaboration concept. The first one I'd like to introduce you to is our interview reminder automation. It's a simple concept. We basically want our interviewers, when they're meeting candidates, to make sure that they're actually accepting or declining the interview requests when they come in to their calendar. Sometimes people receive the invite but don't accept or decline in a timely manner, and that can lead to last-minute reschedules, some embarrassing empty Zoom rooms for the candidate. And so what we've developed was an automation that simply reaches out to our interviewers and reminds them fairly frequently on a daily basis, if they haven't accepted or declined an interview, to please do so. This has not only freed up time for the folks who are doing interview scheduling, but it's also resulted in a better candidate experience, right? We have a higher level of assurance that people are going to show up and be there. The number of last-minute reschedules that we've had to do has dropped drastically, and this has been one of the simplest ideas that's had one of the greatest impacts and outcomes, I think. So I just love this, the idea of the bot reaching out to someone just to make sure that they're going to be there for an interview. This next example is what we're calling a compensation planning worksheet. Doesn't sound all that exciting by itself. We're using Ari for this solution, and the idea here is that if you're an HR practitioner and you're sitting in a room with a manager or a virtual room, and you're trying to work out a compensation decision for someone on that person's team, certainly you can log into your HR system and look at some of the information that's there to help try to inform a decision. But sometimes you'll go to the compensation team or the total rewards team and ask for, give me a full workup for this person. I need to know their comp history, their stock holdings. I need to know what their performance has been. I need to know what the market data says. What are peers in similar roles being paid? How does this person being paid from a pay parity perspective? And so what we've done, and it's very time consuming for someone in compensation to pull all this information together, right? So someone in human resources who's sitting across from that manager has to then go reschedule a second meeting with the manager to say, okay, once I get the data from the compensation team, I'll come back to you and we'll have another chat. So what we've imagined here is, why don't we have that HR partner reach out to Ari and ask their digital assistant to pull this information for them? Rather than having to reschedule a meeting with that manager, they can sit down. Ari will then respond back once a request has been made to pull a person's comp details. It'll show up in their inbox and they can access it right there and then share it with the manager, or at least speak to it, and really speed up the efficiency of those kinds of decisions and increase the quality of those decisions. You're working from a much richer data set in that case. And really what we think is that every compensation decision should come from such rich information. This is going to give us the best outcomes. I think down the road, this will pay dividends for us, and ensures that we're using a consistent process. And the fact that this is available on demand, right? So you just do a search for the employee and pull down their data, whoever you have access to, is just a really powerful concept. This next automation I'd like to share with you is around talent assessments. So we have a 9-box process that we run. And 9-box processes typically are very labor intensive. They are subject to a lot of opinion. You have leaders come into a room, maybe with a whiteboard or a virtual whiteboard, and you're plotting people into a 3x3 grid, right? And we felt that this process could benefit from some automation. So we looked into how we might do that. We assembled a small team and came up with a concept of using automation to remove the subjectivity and to make it a lot easier for people to work through this process. So we had just come out of the first 6 months or so of working from home due to COVID, and this was a time where we wanted to introduce this program and get this rolled out in front of our employees. We're doing that again now, a year later, with some refinements. But let me walk you through the process. We've created a manager questionnaire. The manager fills out the questionnaire for each of their employees and asks questions on a number of topics: performance, relevance to the future, alignment to values, and even retention risk. Then the first automation that we developed runs on top of that data. It moves all the data into a single row, does calculations with question and section weightings, and ultimately what it spits out is exactly where that person is in the 9-box. And we're looking at actual XY coordinates. So it's not just which box someone is in. How close are they to someone else? How close are they to a different box? And so we can start to see what that looks like in a scatter graph. And then meanwhile, we have all of our employees taking a survey. And this data from the survey is used in the third step, which I'll share with you in a moment. But again, we have an automation that runs on top of that data. It helps us to make sense of the information that's there so that we can prepare a PowerPoint presentation. So this is our first automation that we've built that actually builds PowerPoint slides. It's not the last. And what it does is it pulls information from multiple sources, from our HR system, from our stock planning system, from the compensation team. It pulls data from the manager assessment. It pulls in the 9-box result, of course, after some light calibration from the management team. And it pulls in information around from the employee survey in terms of what's going really well for that employee. What are the things that this person values in their career and that they feel like they're being served well for? And probably the most important part, I think, and at least for me, is another section of this PowerPoint slide is a list of actions that we're recommending that a manager should take. So for example, if part of someone's career experience isn't going well, we have some interventions, some actions that a manager can take to try to address those things. And we serve those up to that person in that PowerPoint presentation, and the bot does all that work for us. It transforms survey results into actions. And so for us to be able to do this on a company-wide basis with this level of detail and effort can only be done through automation. If we had started this process and just thrown people at the solution, by the time we got through it 6 months later, the data wouldn't be relevant anymore. But through automation, we're able to really transform a process. So many of our automations are focused around efficiency, and that's fantastic. Some of these now are starting to focus around excellence. And we think this is a better way to do a talent assessment, at least for us. We've had some really positive impacts. We've already seen some great stories emerging from this solution. So this is one that we're very excited about. I'm going to share a demo here. Nothing can replace actually seeing something happen live. So I'm going to talk through this as this animation plays out. So what you're about to see is an onboarding process. And there's going to be some on-screen narration, so I won't try to read all that to you. But we have somebody in HR who needs to onboard a new employee. So this HR person is using Ari. And there's some tasks here that they can kick off with their digital assistant. And so what this HR practitioner, Jenny, is doing is searching for a candidate ID. Types in 723 to try to find someone in our JobVite, our ATS system. So Ari comes back and says, sorry, no results for 723. Is that what you meant to put in? And so the HR practitioner, Jenny, can go back in and say, oops, I meant 123, not 723. So put that in. Now the bot is pulling all of the candidate details in from JobVite and hands it back over to Jenny for her to be able to go in and look at the information and verify that it's correct. This is pulling, unstructured and semi-structured data from documents out of JobVite and putting it into a form here for her. So Jenny now can review these results and say, is this right, or should I make any changes here? In this case, we're going to change San Jose to New York and hit submit. So at this point, the bot now understands that we have an onboarding task, right? The next step in this process is to actually get this person set up in Workday. There's also a task here where we need to get this person set up with IT onboarding. So the next thing that Ari is going to do is going to reach out to Adam, who's our IT manager, and say, hey, Adam, we've got somebody who we need to onboard from an IT perspective. So Adam gets a request in his inbox. And right now, what he's looking at are all of his unassigned requests in Ari, and going to take one of those assignments and remove it from the list of unassigned tasks by assigning it to himself. Now, selecting the various systems that need to be provisioned, hit submit, it hands it back to the automation now, and now the bot has provisioned all of those apps for that employee. So now the human is in the seat as just making decisions, and the bot is going and running and completing those tasks. Jenny gets notified that the IT onboarding is done, onboarding is complete. And as a final check, Jenny will come in and just check all of these steps, make sure that they're all completed. And that's it. So you see a lot of back and forth collaboration between the automation and the people who are making decisions about work. Just a fantastic use case. So hopefully you've heard and seen from us that having a digital assistant at work can be really powerful and can really transform how you work. From automating simple tasks to complex, connecting people and applications, and you can access it from anywhere. So you may be wondering, where do I get started with something like this? Nancy talked about how we started with the headcount report. I've made some conclusions here around where I think there's the greatest opportunity for automation. One of the things I would like to share with you is that you shouldn't have to think about automating a process end to end to get started. You can take a piece of a process, and the process doesn't have to be perfect. It can transform and change later. You can always make modifications to the automation. But these are some areas. So managing workforce planning, onboarding, which we saw in the demo, linking systems, and auditing data between systems, auditing integrations is a great use case. Recruiting, compensation we talked about, talent reviews we talked about, and compliance. This is a big category as well. We have another automation that does employment agreements for us in Europe, which has been really useful. So it's lots of places to get started. You can pick something small and grow from there and see the power of the first automation. I'm going to invoke something that I heard when I was first interviewing with this company a little over 3 years ago. And that was, we have, it takes one automation to get started with this idea. Really, it'll take root in your mind once you have seen it actually happen at your place of employment. And from there, it will catch fire. And once you begin thinking in terms of automation, you'll see the opportunities everywhere. But it really just starts with one in order to make that switch change in your brain for you to start thinking differently about how you work.
Well, and since our theme is that everyone can automate, the truth is, last year we put all of our HR organization through training, and many of the bots and automations we have were very organically grown out of individuals who said, hey, I've got a process that I think should be automated. Sometimes they'd come to the corporate group or the center of HR and say, this is a big process, we should do it on behalf of everybody. But lots of our automations have been written for individuals to make their own jobs better every day. Forrest?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, again, talking about making that switch in your brain, having an entire department have that switch made is really powerful because the ideas begin to flow. So we have, as Nancy mentioned, a person who can do more complex automations for us on our team. And so we have ideas coming in from all over the organization. And so we have an intake process for that. And it's been really exciting to see these new ideas flow through. All right, I'm going to hand it off to Nikki now.
Yes, back to you, Nikki.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Forrest, for that presentation. Every time I listen to you, I know we'll always learn something new, something fresh, and something super exciting. So thank you once again for sharing your experiences with our audience today and for letting me know about that PowerPoint automation, because I will be in touch with you both, just following up on that afterwards. Now, before we turn to Q&A, let me steal a moment to share with you a special offer for those of you attending today. Friends of Everyone Can Automate. If you would like to start your journey with ARI now, we are sharing with you a discount code entitling you to 50% discount on your ARI licenses. Now, as you might expect, terms do apply. So please flag your interest by dropping us a note to everyone@automationanywhere.com, and we'll send you the information about the offer and how you can get started. Our team were overwhelmed by the response to this yesterday. I think the first request for details genuinely came in less than 30 seconds after we finished broadcasting. So that email address for you one more time, everyone@automationanywhere.com. Right, let's take a dive into Q&A. I think we have time for one or two questions, Nancy, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I got a couple here. Okay, where should we go first? This is a great question. We have a system, we have an onboarding system already, but it's not automated. Can we integrate it with robotic process automation? So in other words, can we leverage the system that we have today, and can we integrate with automation? Forrest, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's a great question. One of the things that I love about these kinds of tools, our automation solutions and with ARI, is that it's completely system agnostic. So if you can interact with that system with a keyboard and a mouse, the bot can do it. If you have a system that has APIs, we can interact with the system that way as well. So really, the answer is yes. It doesn't matter what that system is, as long as it's accessible through a computer. You can have a digital assistant help you.
Awesome. I guess a good piece of advice might be to get in contact, and we'll do an assessment of that environment for you and take a look at what we can achieve there together. I got another question here, if that's okay, because we've still got a little bit of time. How much knowledge does HR, well, this is a good one. How much knowledge does HR need to have in order to use Automation Anywhere? Do we need IT to support to build the bot? Who wants to take that one?
Well, let me start, and then Forrest can take it over, because if I can build a bot, anyone can build a bot. I am, as I often say, when you talk about technology, I'm a lot like a dog watching TV. It is not my first language, and yet I have built bots. It is, as I said, we've put the entire HR organization through the training to build a bot, a short training process. And the plethora of bots that have merged is just astonishing. But Forrest, why don't you speak to it more seriously?
Well, no, I think you nailed it. I would say with our digital assistant, once it's shared with you, you don't need any training really to make use of it. In terms of building automations, that's exactly right. In fact, we've had people who have come up with the ideas for automation and then gone and built it and have had some of the greatest impacts in terms of our journey with automation. It's so important for this to be accessible, right? And so we have an interface that allows drag and drop functionality, recorders where the automation can learn how to perform a task by seeing you do it, makes it very simple.
Absolutely.
So the barriers are...
As I mentioned, we added about 10% of capacity to our headcount last year by using automation. We expect we'll double that this year because this has been so many automations have been organically grown by having everyone trained.
So this is so truly something that anybody, as you say, Nancy, can do. And I guess the fewer the barriers, the more accessible this becomes and the greater then the benefits that everybody can achieve.
I would say it is no more difficult to build a bot than it is to use an Excel spreadsheet.
Wow. Or a PowerPoint.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Thank you. So in summary, and Nancy, Forrest, this is to both of you. I mean, you've given everybody some tremendous advice today. Is there anything else that you would add in kind of closing comments, really, that would encourage anybody that's perhaps, hesitating, can see the benefits, but how do I just move this forward? How do I get going?
Let me speak to the function of human resources. The automation is not something that's going to happen in the future. Automation is happening now. When we talk about the future of work, that is today. And the issue with human resources is whether you are automating the function or whether you know of another function that's being automated, HR needs to understand this language. HR really needs to understand what this means, or we become irrelevant in terms of how we help human beings thrive and work in our environments. And so this is not something that we think, IT will handle it. When something is actually affecting the very nature of how human beings are going to engage in the workplace, it needs to be the first language of HR. Forrest?
Yeah, I agree. Certainly, the sense of urgency here is really real. The other thing I would say is, we can be a great resource. When I say we, I mean the HR department at Automation Anywhere. So I'm happy to share automations that we've done. Nothing that we've done within our own organization needs to remain a secret. And so you've got resources, right? We have a community. We have a website called A People where people can go and ask questions and see what others have done. So there are places to serve yourself and places where you can get assistance with this journey as well. And I would just reiterate what I said earlier, which is it starts with one. That one automation leads to many, many others. And it's a very fun thing to watch.
And it's addictive too, right? Because
Yes.
Like you say, once you start with one, you just got to, and another one, and another one, and another one. Look, one of the things that I love most of all about our organization is how approachable everybody within the organization is. And I absolutely include Nancy and Forrest in that statement. Nancy has on a regular basis, I won't commit you whether it's monthly or quarterly, I'm not quite sure of the regularity, but I know Nancy has, breakfast briefings, she has coffee with Nancy. I would urge the HR community that are tuning in today, get in contact with Automation Anywhere. We will put you in contact with Nancy. We will put you in contact with Forrest, and we will make these resources available to you because, as Forrest says, this really is no secret. It's a revolution, and it's a revolution that we want you to join us on and enjoy the benefits of. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, sadly, we're out of time. I want to thank you for being with us here today. I hope you enjoyed our content because I have. Every time I listen to Nancy and Forrest, it just brings pure joy to my heart. Please don't forget we're back here tomorrow with our very own CIO, Sumit Johar, who will share with you how everyone in IT can automate. Now that's sure to be an eye-opener. Please tune in and bring those IT colleagues with you. Take care and thank you.